My sister Emma was filming a TikTok about her aesthetic morning routine when I walked through the door, still carrying the cardboard box with my desk supplies from Pinnacle Digital Solutions. She barely glanced up from adjusting her ring light. But when she heard me explain to our mom what happened, her laugh echoed through our Cedar Park kitchen like glass breaking. 3 months later, when she showed up at my new company's Austin office, in a blazer she'd clearly bought that morning, asking if we were hiring, I simply smiled and said, "Let me check with my business partner Marcus about entry-level positions." Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The notification came at exactly 4:37 on a Friday afternoon, the kind of corporate timing designed to minimize disruption and maximize humiliation. "David, can you come to the conference room, please?" The message from Mr. Richardson felt like ice water in my veins, especially since I'd just finished presenting the quarterly results that showed my clients had generated 43% more revenue than any other account manager at Pinnacle Digital Solutions. I'd been with the company for 5.5 years, starting as an intern who organized files and fetched coffee, slowly climbing my way up to senior account manager. Through sheer determination and an obsessive attention to detail that clients absolutely loved, my cubicle was positioned near the window, overlooking downtown Austin. And I could see the evening rush hour traffic beginning to build on MoPac as I gathered my laptop and walked toward what I somehow knew would be my execution. The conference room smelled like stale coffee and broken dreams, with Mr. Richardson sitting across from Jennifer Thompson from HR, both wearing the kind of expression you'd see at a funeral for someone you barely knew. The termination letter was already printed, sitting on the polished oak table like a death certificate. "David, we're restructuring the department," Mr. Richardson began, his voice carrying the tone of someone who'd practiced this speech in the mirror. "Your position is being eliminated effective immediately. This has nothing to do with your performance." Jennifer slid a severance package across the table while explaining COBRA benefits and unemployment procedures, her words floating past me like smoke. I'd brought in over $2 million in new business for Pinnacle in the last 18 months alone. But apparently my position was redundant while 3 junior staff members couldn't tell the difference between impressions and clicks were keeping their jobs. The walk back to my desk felt like a death march, with colleagues averting their eyes and pretending to be deeply engrossed in their computer screens. I packed my things mechanically, muscle memory guiding my hands as my mind reeled with the implications. My signed photo with the Austin FC team from the campaign I designed. My collection of client thank you cards. The small, succulent plant my mentor Lisa Chen had given me when I got promoted, all of it fitting into a cardboard box that felt impossibly small for 5 years of my life. 28 years old, and I was driving home to my childhood bedroom in my parents' house. The same room where I dreamed of making it big in Austin's competitive marketing scene. The drive from downtown to Cedar Park gave me 35 minutes to process what had just happened. 35 minutes of afternoon Texas heat beating through my windshield while I tried to figure out how I'd explain this to my family. My parents had always been proud of my steady job at a real company, especially compared to Emma's career as a lifestyle influencer, which they barely understood but tolerated because she seemed happy and occasionally paid for dinner. Emma was in the kitchen when I walked in, her phone propped against a vase of artificial flowers while she filmed herself making what she called wellness smoothies for her 53,000 Instagram followers. She had this whole setup with professional lighting and a ring light that cast perfect shadows across her face, turning our ordinary kitchen into a content creation studio. Her caption would probably be something about nourishing your body and soul, while she blended frozen mango with almond milk and spirulina powder that cost more per ounce than premium coffee. "How was work, hermano?" she asked, without looking away from her phone, adjusting the angle to capture her profile while the blender whirred in the background. The question felt like a knife twisting in my chest, and when I set the cardboard box on the counter and explained that I'd been laid off, her reaction was immediate and brutal. She started laughing, not the gentle, supportive laugh of someone who finds humor in life's absurdities, but the sharp, cutting laugh of someone who found genuine amusement in my misfortune. "Oh my God, David, you're so dramatic," she said, still recording. Maybe this is the universe telling you to try something creative for once instead of being such a corporate robot. You should start a YouTube channel or something. She turned back to her phone, completely dismissing the gravity of what had just happened to me. Besides, you'll find another boring office job in like a week. You're good at that stuff. Sting of Emma's laughter followed me to my childhood bedroom, where posters of old marketing campaigns still hung on the walls like relics from a more optimistic time. I'd kept them there as motivation, studying the brilliance of Nike's Just Do It and Apple's Think Different campaigns, dreaming of the day I'd create something equally iconic. Now they felt like mockery, reminders of ambitions that seemed increasingly naive in the harsh light of corporate reality. My journey into digital marketing hadn't been accidental or convenient. Growing up in Cedar Park, watching my parents struggle to keep their small restaurant afloat while bigger chains moved into the area, I'd become obsessed with understanding how businesses succeeded or failed. My dad would come home exhausted every night, flour still dusting his forearms, talking about how the new Tex-Mex place down the street was stealing customers with their flashy social media presence. "They don't even make good food," he'd mutter, "but everyone goes there because of their Instagram." That's when I realized that talent and hard work weren't enough anymore. You needed to know how to tell your story, how to reach people, how to make them care. I'd started learning digital marketing while still in high school, spending weekends watching YouTube tutorials and reading industry blogs until my eyes burned. While Emma was at parties or shopping with friends, I was building practice websites and experimenting with Google Ads using the $20 a week I earned bussing tables at a nearby diner. The University of Texas had an excellent business program, but I couldn't afford the full tuition, so I worked 2 jobs while taking classes. Sleeping maybe 4 hours a night and living off energy drinks and determination. My internship at Pinnacle Digital Solutions was supposed to be temporary, just a way to gain real-world experience before graduation. Preparing and narrating the story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. But I threw myself into it with the same intensity I brought to everything else, staying late to analyze campaign data, volunteering for weekend client events, and always being the first to raise my hand when someone needed help with a project. The full-time offer came during my senior year, and while the salary wasn't spectacular, it felt like validation that my relentless effort was finally paying off. Emma's path had been completely different, seemingly blessed by the social media gods from the moment she posted her first outfit photo. She had this natural ability to curate her life into perfect little squares, turning mundane moments into aspirational content that people couldn't stop watching. Her follower count grew organically while I was grinding through 60-hour weeks, learning about conversion rates and customer acquisition costs. She'd wake up at noon, spend an hour taking photos of her breakfast, and somehow make enough money from brand partnerships to buy designer clothes and take trips to places like Tulum and Barcelona. The contrast wasn't lost on our parents, who loved us both, but clearly didn't understand either of our careers. They'd brag about Emma's Instagram posts to their friends at church, showing off photos of her at fancy hotels and restaurants. While my achievements were harder to explain, how do you describe a successful email marketing campaign to someone who still prints out directions from MapQuest? When I increased a client's online sales by 200%, it didn't translate into the kind of tangible success they could easily share with their social circle. But I'd never resented Emma's success, at least not consciously. Her world seemed frivolous to me, built on the shifting sands of algorithms and trends. While I was building something solid and permanent with real business skills, I took pride in being the serious one, the responsible one, the one who understood how money actually worked in the digital economy. My clients weren't just buying pretty pictures. They were investing in strategic growth that would sustain their businesses for years. The irony was that I'd actually helped Emma in the early days, back when she was struggling to break through. The noise on Instagram, I'd taught her about hashtag strategy, helped her understand her analytics, even introduced her to a few smaller brands looking for micro-influencers. She'd absorbed the lessons quickly and then surpassed my expectations, developing an intuitive sense for content that resonated with audiences. But somewhere along the way, she'd started to see my world as boring and conventional while I'd begun to view hers as shallow and unsustainable. My apartment near downtown Austin had been my pride and joy. Converted loft in an old warehouse building that I'd furnished carefully with modern pieces that reflected my professional aesthetic. The rent was steep, eating up almost half my salary, but it felt important to live somewhere that matched my aspirations. I'd hosted client dinners there, impressing them with the exposed brick walls and the view of the city skyline. Now I was back in my teenage bedroom, surrounded by participation trophies and academic awards that felt like artifacts from someone else's life. The severance package would last maybe 2 months if I was careful. And the job market in Austin was competitive despite the city's reputation for opportunity. Pinnacle had been a respected name in the industry, but getting fired during a restructuring would raise questions with potential employers. I'd have to craft my story carefully, emphasizing my results while downplaying the circumstances of my departure. The thought of starting over, of proving myself again to new colleagues and clients, felt exhausting before I'd even begun. Sleep came fitfully that first night, my mind cycling through worst-case scenarios and contingency plans. I'd built my entire identity around being successful, reliable, and upwardly mobile. Without the structure of work, without the validation of client wins and positive feedback from supervisors, I felt untethered, like a satellite that had lost contact with mission control. Emma's laughter echoed in my dreams, mixing with the sound of my own voice, explaining quarterly reports to empty conference rooms. Emma's morning routine the next day was a masterclass in effortless privilege that I watched unfold from the kitchen table where I sat with my laptop, desperately refreshing job boards and trying to update my LinkedIn profile. She descended the stairs at 11:30, already perfectly styled and matching athleisure that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. Her hair in those carefully messy waves that took 40 minutes to achieve, but looked like she'd just rolled out of bed. The first thing she did was check her phone, scrolling through the hundreds of comments on her previous day's post about finding balance in chaos. While I'd been getting systematically destroyed by corporate bureaucracy, "Good morning, beautiful," our mom called from the stove, where she was preparing Emma's usual breakfast of steel-cut oats with fresh berries and almond butter, arranged in a bowl that Emma had specifically requested because it photographed well. The same woman who'd given me a concerned frown and asked if I was sure I was making the right career choices was now beaming at Emma like she'd just announced a cure for cancer. The double standard was so blatant it would have been comical. If it wasn't slowly eating away at my sanity, Emma's entire existence seemed to operate on a different set of rules than the rest of us. While I'd been getting up at 6 every morning for 5 years, commuting through Austin traffic, and sitting in fluorescent-lit offices until 8 or 9 at night, she worked from our parents' house, from coffee shops, from exotic locations, that her followers funded through their engagement with her sponsored content. Her office was wherever she felt inspired, which today happened to be the backyard patio where she'd set up her ring light and phone tripod to capture the perfect golden hour lighting. The brand partnerships flowed in like a river of passive income that I couldn't begin to understand. Companies sent her hundreds of dollars worth of products every week, hoping she'd feature them in her stories or posts. Skincare serums, workout, clothes, supplements, jewelry, home decor items. Everything arrived in carefully branded packaging that she'd unbox dramatically for her audience. What she didn't use, she'd give away or sell, creating multiple revenue streams from single collaborations. The UPS driver knew her by name and joked about needing a bigger truck just for our address. But it wasn't just the money that grated. On me, it was the complete lack of accountability that came with her success. When I missed a client deadline or made a mistake in a campaign, there were immediate consequences. Angry emails, tense meetings, threats to budgets, and timelines that affected real people's livelihoods. When Emma posted sponsored content that didn't perform well, or when she failed to deliver on brand partnership agreements, the worst that happened was a mildly disappointed email from a marketing manager who'd probably forget about it within a week. She'd built her entire brand around being relatable and authentic. But everything about her life was carefully curated performance art. The casual outfit she wore to grab coffee at radio, coffee on Barton Springs Road, was selected from dozens of options, each piece chosen for how it would look in photos and how it aligned with her carefully constructed image. The spontaneous adventures she documented were planned days in advance, with backup locations and contingency plans for different lighting conditions. Even her relationship with her boyfriend Jake was monetized, with couples content that performed especially well with her demographic. The family dynamics around Emma's success were particularly painful to witness. Our parents, who'd worked 16-hour days for decades to build their small restaurant, treated her influencer career with a respect and admiration they'd never shown for my corporate achievements. When she posted about a new brand partnership, they'd share it on their own social media accounts and tell their customers about their successful daughter who works with major companies. When I'd closed a 6-figure deal at Pinnacle, the response was a polite, "That's nice, mijo," and a quick change of subject. Emma had this way of making everything seem effortless while simultaneously emphasizing how hard she worked. She'd post about grinding and hustling while showing herself in a hammock at some boutique hotel in Marfa, talking about how being an influencer was more than just taking pretty pictures. The cognitive dissonance was staggering, watching her describe the challenges of her job while living a lifestyle that most people could only dream of. She'd complain about the pressure of constantly creating content while taking more vacation days in a month than I'd taken in entire years. The worst part was how she'd positioned herself as an entrepreneurial inspiration, regularly posting about building your own path and following your dreams. Her followers ate it up, leaving comments about how she'd motivated them to pursue their passions and take risks, but her risk-taking was subsidized by our parents' house, their health insurance, their grocery budget, and the safety net of knowing she could always move back home if things didn't work out. Meanwhile, I'd been supporting myself since college, paying my own rent, building my own credit, and taking actual financial risks that could have left me homeless if they'd failed. She'd started a small online boutique the previous year, selling curated vintage pieces and handmade jewelry that fit her aesthetic brand. The launch was treated like a major family event, with our parents sharing posts and encouraging their friends to support Emma's new business venture. Never mind that the initial inventory was funded by their savings, that she was using their house as a warehouse, and that most of her early sales came from her existing follower base. The praise and encouragement she received for this side project dwarfed any recognition I'd ever gotten for my actual business achievements. The boutique had been moderately successful, primarily because Emma's followers trusted her taste and wanted to emulate her style. But success in her world was measured differently than in mine. She didn't need to hit quarterly targets or manage profit margins or deal with difficult suppliers. When something sold out, it was because she'd curated such an amazing piece. When something didn't sell, it was because her audience wasn't ready for this level of sophistication. Every outcome was spun into a positive narrative that reinforced her brand and her followers' perception of her business acumen. The rejection emails began arriving with clockwork precision, each one a politely worded dagger that chipped away at my confidence. While your experience is impressive, we've decided to move forward with another candidate. Interest, but we're looking for someone with a different skill set. Keep your resume on file for future opportunities. The language was corporate sanitized, but the message was clear. I wasn't what they wanted. After 2 weeks of applications, phone screenings, and video interviews that seemed to go well before dissolving into digital silence, I started to wonder if there was something fundamentally wrong with me that I couldn't see. Meanwhile, Emma's world continued to expand with opportunities that seemed to materialize out of thin air. A lifestyle brand reached out about a potential collaboration that would pay her more in 1 month than men I'd made in 3 months at Pinnacle. A local Austin magazine wanted to feature her in an article about young entrepreneurs who were disrupting traditional business models. The irony wasn't lost on me that while I was being systematically rejected by the traditional business world, she was being celebrated for avoiding it entirely. The mornings were the worst. I'd wake up at 6 out of habit, my body still programmed for the rhythm of corporate life, only to remember that I had nowhere to go. Emma would sleep until noon, then emerge looking effortlessly photogenic, while I sat at the kitchen table in the same clothes I'd worn for 3 days, scrolling through job listings that all seemed to require skills I didn't have or experience I couldn't provide. She'd make her smoothie, set up her lighting, and earn more money in a single Instagram story than I'd made in my last week at Pinnacle. The financial pressure was becoming unbearable. My savings were evaporating faster than I'd anticipated. Even with my parents refusing to accept rent money and my mom quietly slipping groceries into my old bedroom, health insurance through Cobra was eating up a significant portion of my severance. And my car payment, student loans, and credit card bills didn't care about my employment status. I started calculating how long I could survive on ramen noodles and generic coffee, a depressing math problem that kept me awake at night. Emma's financial situation, by contrast, seemed to improve daily. She'd booked a sponsored trip to Marfa with a boutique hotel that was launching a new wellness retreat. The compensation included free accommodation, meals, and a 5-figure fee for creating content that would showcase their authentic Texas luxury experience. She spent more on a single dinner in Dallas than I'd budgeted for food for the entire month. The disparity felt like a cosmic joke, a reminder that the universe distributed its rewards based on principles I'd never understood. My networking efforts yielded nothing but uncomfortable coffee meetings, where former colleagues would offer vague encouragement while avoiding my eyes. The Austin marketing scene was smaller than I'd realized, and word of my termination had spread through the industry with the efficiency of a virus. People were polite but distant, treating me like I might be contagious with career failure. The few solid leads I developed dissolved into nothing, leaving me more isolated and desperate than before. The worst part was how Emma's success was being reframed as validation of her superior instincts. Emma always knew that traditional jobs were becoming obsolete. Our mom would say to her friends, conveniently forgetting that she'd been concerned about Emma's lack of direction just 2 years earlier, "She's so smart to have built her own path instead of depending on some corporation that can just fire you whenever they want." The implied criticism of my choices was clear, even if it was wrapped in praise for Emma's foresight. Emma had started giving me unsolicited career advice, delivered with the patronizing tone of someone who'd never actually worked in the corporate world. "You should think about becoming a freelancer," she'd suggest, while editing photos from her latest brand partnership shoot. "The traditional 9-to-5 is dead, David. You need to embrace the gig economy." But she'd talk about building your personal brand and monetizing your expertise as if these were revolutionary concepts that had never occurred to me. The fact that she'd never managed a team, never dealt with corporate politics, never had to justify her decisions to stakeholders or meet quarterly targets seemed irrelevant to her confidence in dispensing professional guidance. The family dinners became exercises in barely contained frustration. Emma would casually mention her latest opportunities while I sat quietly, having nothing positive to report about my job search. She'd gotten invited to speak at a digital marketing conference in San Antonio, an event where she'd be sharing the stage with actual industry professionals who had decades of experience. The organizers wanted her perspective on authentic engagement and building genuine connections with audiences. The irony was suffocating. Watching someone who'd never worked in traditional marketing being positioned as an expert in the field I'd devoted my career to mastering, her confidence seemed to grow with each success, while mine withered with each rejection. She'd started talking about expanding her boutique, maybe opening a physical location in South Austin where she could host events and create experiential content. She'd connected with other local influencers and was planning collaboration projects that would cross-promote their brands. The business acumen she'd developed through trial and error was impressive, but it was built on advantages she'd never had to acknowledge or defend. The most painful moments came when well-meaning family friends would ask about my job search in front of Emma, forcing me to explain my situation while she sat there glowing with success. "I'm sure something will come up soon," they'd say, the same empty platitudes that had lost all meaning. Emma would nod sympathetically, but I could see the satisfaction in her eyes. The quiet triumph of someone who'd chosen correctly while I'd bet everything on a system that had ultimately betrayed me. My mentor Lisa Chen reached out during this period, offering to meet for coffee and discuss potential opportunities. Lisa had been one of the few people at Pinnacle who genuinely believed in my potential, and seeing her reminded me of who I'd been before the termination had shattered my confidence. She was honest about the challenges facing marketing professionals in Austin's competitive market, but she also reminded me of campaigns I'd created that had genuinely moved the needle for clients. Her encouragement felt like oxygen to someone who'd been drowning in rejection and self-doubt. But even Lisa's support couldn't change the fundamental reality of my situation. I was 31 days unemployed, with depleting savings and mounting bills, while Emma was planning her next sponsored vacation and talking about hiring an assistant to help manage her growing business. The universe had spoken clearly about which path was more viable, and I was finally starting to listen. The breakthrough came during my darkest moment, sitting in my childhood bedroom at 2 a.m, staring at another rejection email. Lisa Chen had forwarded me a message from Marcus Williams, a former Pinnacle colleague who'd left 6 months earlier to start his own boutique agency. He needed someone with my client management skills and was willing to offer equity instead of a traditional salary. The risk was enormous, but I had nothing left to lose. Within 3 weeks, Elevate Creative Agency was born. Marcus handled the creative side, while I managed client relationships and strategy. Our first client was a local food truck owner who'd been burned by a larger agency that had promised everything and delivered nothing. We worked 18-hour days, but every minute felt purposeful. Our second client came through word of mouth, then our third. Emma watched our early success with growing interest, suddenly asking detailed questions about our business model and client acquisition strategies. 3 months later, she appeared at our East Austin office wearing that hastily purchased blazer, her usual confidence replaced by nervous energy. "I've been thinking about transitioning into more traditional marketing," she said, avoiding eye contact. "I'd love to discuss opportunities here." I smiled, remembering her laughter that day in the kitchen. "Let me check with Marcus about entry positions." Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.